what you ask me or any comments you may have as well. And if you want me to do a case study, either to celebrate your success story or to just tell me where you are and how you're doing, then email me at Evan Thomas Broke. I can't talk. Evan Thomas Broke at yahoo.com, and we'll have a conversation via email like I'm doing right now with somebody to develop an episode, a case study that most likely will drop at the end of September or the beginning of October. But again, thank you so much for your recent comments. The one that I just read that I'll be thinking about for an episode next week is, how do you determine your net worth based on the fact that stocks are overinflated right now? I love that question, so I'm going to think through the answer for you. Coming up, most likely on an episode real soon, and hopefully next week as I develop my strategies for what we're going to talk about. But yeah, the end of the week, it's Labor Day week. Hopefully all of you are doing well. And you can see I'm back in my bedroom recording this episode. I'll be talking today about my condo redesign, so I'll reserve that for coming up here in just a minute. Sometimes I'm deep in thought over what I'm going to do with my living space so that I can feel like it's new, etc. So I'll be thinking about if you guys do the same. But yeah, again, Labor Day week. One of my episodes this week was inspired by a comment from somebody that talked about energy drinks, right? And I talked about my addiction to protein bars as well. So Monday I talked about, obviously, Labor Day, better working conditions, don't blame your employer. And I also brought up the concept of maybe firing your employer, meaning it might be time for some of you to look for new jobs out there. You don't want to be stagnant. You want to continue to grow and learn. And hopefully through that process you will also make more money as well, so that you can continue to put your extra money in your savings and investing vehicles. I talked also about, building fire for yourself. Not only firing your employer potentially, but that fire, the financial independence, the possibly retire early, putting that fire within you to create the engine, remember, so that you can build your wealth slowly, and that engine then creates income for you as well. And I like to refer to that as the value journey. And then on Wednesday, I talked about do not let spending ruin your future. I like to pretend like I'm poor, and I mentioned that you guys should do the same. And as you make more money, the secret is to act like you don't. Just continue to do what you do and find satisfaction in buying investments rather than material items. I also joked around a little bit this week about, people are going to think you're crazy. Like, how Dave Ramsey talks about, people are going to think you're really weird. Yeah, it's true. Not many people have the saving money gene, if that makes sense, right? And so, yeah, your friends might think you're a little strange, and that's why, this is a journey that you celebrate amongst yourself and others in your life, perhaps your significant others, etc., your family members. And yeah, it's sad really that we can't celebrate more and share with people what we've done. But you know what, that's okay. I want you guys to share with me, as I mentioned in the comments, how you're doing, so that I can create episodes for celebrating your success stories. But moving on to today's episode for this Friday, I wanted to come up and share 3 ways that I continue through the years to keep my spending in check over time. And as I go through these, I want you to be thinking about your own journey. Like, where are you right now? Are you doing as well as you can be doing? Are you thinking that there might be things you can do better? And I know, for many of you, if you are in your 30s or even your 40s, you might be thinking like, wow, I've got to do something. And you guys know I didn't really start saving until I was 40 years old. So if you're in your 20s right now, you have time, but you need to get things in order as quickly as possible. So the first thing I came up with for how I've kept my spending in check over time is that first I had to identify the problem. I had to identify that I myself was the problem. And this goes back to the early 90s when I first got out of college, and I got my first job in 1990 when I was 24 years old. I just started spending money like crazy when I was 25, when I was 26, when I was 27, when I was 28, and when I was 29. And at age 29, I declared bankruptcy because I lost my job. I had no money. I couldn't pay my rent. And I felt like that was the only thing I could do. I had $40,000 of debt at that point. And I wiped it all away. And it was still another 11 years that I was living paycheck to paycheck all the way up to age like 40. But I had to stop and say to myself, Evan, you are the problem. And as we talked about this week, I used to blame my employer. Remember, I had that job I told you about where that guy said to me, we're up here and you're down here. Now that may have been very true. He should not have said that. That was the old boys network. In other words, people might favor other people because they know them better, they're friends with them, and they may promote them. And if that's the environment that you're in, you've got to get out. You've got to seek other employers that will treat you much better. And that's what happened to me. I feel like after 9 years of struggle, I finally found a company that I knew would treat me really well. And that happened in 1998, towards the end of 1998. And I remember looking around, and everybody, like most of the employees were there for 10 years, 15 years or more. And I knew that they would be leaving if the company did not treat them well. So even though, as you guys may know from watching my other episodes, I fell into a career path that wasn't really what I went to college for, but you know what? Lots of people fall into things that they didn't go to college for. I had to give up a dream, but I focused on a new dream, and that new dream was to stabilize my investments, stabilize my income, get my spending in control, and then continue on a path that led to me to where I am today. But, I was the problem. Again, I blamed others, my employer, friends that asked me to do things that cost a lot of money that I didn't want to do, I guess. But anyway, it's nobody's fault but my own that I spent as much money as I did. I used to go to the mall and spend on clothing and, get home and not even care how much was on my credit card. I remember opening up the statements and I saw men paid due. And I was like, okay, I can do that. I'm going to go spend a little bit more. And then the min pay due would be a little bit more. And I'd be like, I can do that. That's fine. No worries. And I felt like a job would come where I would be able to pay it all off, but that job never came. And so, I just had to, identify I am the problem and then fix it. So if you're listening to this right now, and if you're one of those people, and I know there might be people out there that are watching that feel that way, that you might say to yourself, I am the problem. You have to have that awareness, and if that's you, I want you to know that there is hope. There is hope for you. I did it, and I think everybody can do it as well. You have to stop and say, I am the problem. And you should be saying to yourself right now, 2025 is going to be your year. Remember the rose. Recognition of savings excellence. That's for you guys, right? Give yourself a pat on the back. Give yourself a rose. And recognize that you have the ability to save and invest and pay down debt if you have it. And you have to do things in the right order that we talk about all the time. But back to number one, I had to identify first that I was the problem. Number two, for three things that continue to keep me not spending over time is my condo redesigns. Every 2, 3, or 4 years, I look at my space and I say, you know what can I do? And it's usually that I take things away rather than spending money on buying new stuff, to be quite honest. In fact, I'm in the latter phase right now of a condo redesign. I told you about it before. Remember I said I thought I was going to sell my desk? Well, I decided not to. I need my desk, right? I was thinking I didn't. So what happens is you go through these phases in your brain and you listen to yourself and you role play and you say, what would it be like without my desk? What if I moved it away? Would I feel better about the space? Is it larger? And when I did move things around, I was like, no, it didn't feel any different after a day or so, so I moved it back. Then you do it again. And in my living room right now, I am keeping the couch, I think. Yeah. I may eventually get a new one, but right now, I was actually trying to think maybe I could get rid of the couch. But as I moved it to the side and I, moved things around, I decided that that was not the right choice. What I'm doing today actually is I have the Salvation Army coming to pick up a large antique trunk that I've had since 1987, and I think it's time to let it go. It's a big trunk that is hard to use, and I'm not a pack rat. I'm a minimalist. And so a friend of mine the other day said, you know what, Evan, it really has no purpose, that trunk, anymore, because you're not really storing anything in it. You're not putting your TV on top of it like you did before. And I was thinking I could paint it a different color and all this kind of stuff. And I think my final decision is I'm getting rid of the trunk today. And that will open up the space to move the furniture around differently. So my redesign really cost $0. Because I don't know if I shared this with you before, but I was looking on West Elm and I was looking at all this new furniture and I was up to like $3,000 or $4,000 in my brain, because what you learn to do is spend on paper or in your brain first, see how it feels, and then decide if you should do that or not. And 9 times out of 10 I always go back and say, whew, I'm so glad I didn't spend all that money, and I feel good about myself knowing that I've bought quality items that I can keep over time, and I want you guys to do the same. So every couple of years, look at your space, whether you rent or whether you own, and rather going out and getting a bigger place, a 2-bedroom apartment or a bigger home that you may not really need, just stop and say to yourself, I'm going to do a redesign. And a redesign doesn't have to be this huge big thing. You make it big in your brain to fool yourself what is my main goal? Do I want to free up space? Do I want it to feel larger? Do I want more furniture? Maybe you do need furniture, right? You guys know your own situation, so be honest with yourself and, take the time to figure out what it actually is and put it on paper. Write it down. By the way, I wanted to show you guys this book. This is an old world kind of a book. Maybe this will be the thumbnail. Which has no significance to this episode other than I think it's beautiful. It has these leather strappy things, right? And people like page turning. I spent a lot of money on this book actually, but I love it. The pages, it's very Indiana Jones, don't you think? That might be too loud. Yeah. Nothing is written inside of it, but I love old movies like from the 1930s and 40s. Film noir. Do you know what that is? That's where films that are kind of dark. There's usually a femme fatale like Barbara Stanwyck. Fred McMurray is in a lot of them. Double Indemnity is one of my favorite movies. But anyway, I wanted to show you this because it's kind of a good ASMR. And I use this in my condo redesign. Anyway, so I'll put that aside. Maybe I'll do a role play with that in the future. But moving on to my last comment for 3 ways that I continue to keep my spending in check over time is learn to know yourself. Learn to really identify what it is that makes you tick. What is it that really drives you? What makes you wake up early in the morning and say, I want to do this? What gives you an adrenaline rush? You have to find that as it relates to the pursuit of financial independence, because for some of you it might be real estate. For some of you it might be mutual funds, right? Everybody has what they want to make their main wealth building tool. In other words, back in 2005, I spent a year thinking that I was going to buy multiple condos, because in that time condos were priced, I guess, pretty low in Florida. Now Florida's crazy. You probably have seen in the news, and I've talked a little bit about it, but I thought, you know what, Evan, you could build wealth, because back then I was poor. You could build wealth by buying real estate and renting it out. But then I got so stressed about the fact that I would have to rent it out, even though I could hire a management company. I stopped myself and I said, nope, this does not feel comfortable. So don't let anybody persuade you to do something with money that you don't feel comfortable with. And don't try to convince yourself that you can get comfortable with something if you're not. You've got to know yourself. You've got to listen to your gut. You have to have a gut check. In fact, the Susie Orman episode that I was on in 2012, in July, the episode is called Gut Check. You can watch it on Freezy on Amazon. I forget what episode number it is, but the episode is called Gut Check, where she talks about, listening to your gut. And my How Am I Doing segment is the very last episode. So if you're interested in that, that was in 2012. But yeah, listen to your gut, listen to yourself, and do what you feel is best, because that is how you're going to have success with money. I kid you not. You have to know that. And you have to know that you have it within you to make that happen. And so with that, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and close out this episode. Thank you so much for joining me this week. And if you like content like this, please give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. Consider subscribing as well if you have not done so. And I'll see you guys real soon.